This is a true story about two Iranian spies who came to Israel to do whatever it takes to take out a former Israeli defense minister. This is not a movie. And so far, they haven't been caught. It all began 5 years ago in August of 2018, when two Iranian spies arrived separately in Cyprus, not as tourists but under false identities with forged European passports. Now, there's a lot of Iranian immigrants in Europe, especially in Germany and Sweden, so forging Iranian documents wasn't really hard for them. They were smart. Both men were in their late 30s, athletic builds, dark hair and dark complexions. They were Persian, ethnic Persians from Iran. They rented apartments in the same city in Cyprus, but not too close to each other. They went to great lengths to keep their contact with each other hidden. They communicated via untraceable phones and always met in public places where they could easily escape if necessary. But why Cyprus? Why did they choose this small Mediterranean island as their base of operations? Well, Cyprus is an EU member state, and Israelis can enter Cyprus visa-free for up to 90 days. So it was the perfect place for these two spies to wait for their moment. What they were waiting for was to receive orders from their handlers back in Tehran to cross into Israel. Once inside, their target would be former Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, who at the time had recently left his post. Their orders were to get close to him, find a way to kidnap or kill him, and then smuggle him back to Iran. Apparently, in the eyes of the Iranian regime, he was a war crime. He had ordered the killing of hundreds of protesters during his tenure as defense minister, so now he needed to pay the price. It didn't matter if he was a civilian or not. In the eyes of the mullahs in Tehran, he was still a legitimate target. So these two Persian spies waited patiently in Cyprus until October 7, 2018, when they received their orders. Finally, they were to enter Israel. Now, what makes this story unique is that we actually know how these two spies crossed into Israel. They didn't use any fancy tricks like forged documents or fake beards and disguises. No, they simply walked through the border from Cyprus. On October 7, 2018, they entered Israel near the Israeli city of Ofakim. We know about it because they were caught on camera by Israeli surveillance cameras walking across the border. Then they disappeared. The next day, October 8th, they took a taxi to the central bus station in Jerusalem. There, using Israeli surveillance footage, we can see them part ways. Each man disappears into the crowd. It is believed that one of them headed north towards the city of Hadera, which is just south of the Lebanese border, and the other traveled east towards Jericho, which is just east of the Jordan River border. They were now deep inside Israel and no longer under the watchful eye of Shin Bet or Israel's security services, or so they thought. Meanwhile, the Israeli defense establishment knew very well who these two spies were and what their mission was. But they chose not to reveal it to the public. For operational reasons, they let the spy continue on his merry way. What happened next was pure comedy gold. You see, once inside Israel, both spies got jobs as waiters in hotels. Yes, you heard me right. These highly trained, highly motivated killers who were willing to do whatever it takes to kill a former Israeli defense minister, they settle for working at McDonald's. Okay, not McDonald's, but at hotels as waiters. They had forged Israeli ID cards with the help of fake documents and their real faces. They opened bank accounts and tried to blend in as much as possible. Again, this is not a movie, and yes, it is true. They worked as waiters for almost 3 years. Why did they stay in Israel? Because their handlers in Tehran kept telling them to wait for further instructions. They were good little obedient slaves and followed their masters. Meanwhile, they were living in cheap hotel rooms. One of them stayed in a hotel in the northern coastal city of Hadera, while the other lived in a cheap hotel in the southern desert city of Beersheba. Both cities are quite far away from each other, and apparently they were not allowed to meet up. Again, we know all of this thanks to Israeli intelligence services. They were watching these two clowns the entire time. Then, in September of 2021, Avigdor Lieberman made a surprise comeback. He was appointed as the new alternate Prime Minister and Defense Minister. Was this a coincidence? I don't know. But it seems the Iranian regime also had a hand in it. As soon as this happened, the two spies' cover was blown. They were no longer Mr. Ali and Mr. Hassan, the friendly waiter. They were now known enemies of the state. Shin Bet immediately sent an alert to all police units across the country, and a nationwide manhunt ensued. But by the time Israeli police were ready to pounce, they were gone. The two spies fled Israel on September 6, 2021. They left separately, each taking a different route. One flew from Tel Aviv to Istanbul, Turkey, with a connecting flight to Tehran. The other flew from Jerusalem to Frankfurt, Germany, and then to Tehran. They may have thought they were James Bond, but their exit from Israel was anything but suave. Now here's where the story gets even more ridiculous. After they returned to Iran, they were celebrated as heroes. The Iranian regime threw a huge party for them and gave them monetary rewards. They were interviewed by Fars news agency, which is close to Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps, and they told the mullahs exactly what they wanted to hear. They claimed that they had managed to smuggle weapons into Israel and that they had set up a network of spies that will allow them to carry out future missions. Lies, all lies, but the mullahs lapped it up. And now these two clowns, their pictures are displayed on billboards across Tehran, and they are considered role models for young Iranian men. But the truth is, they weren't able to smuggle weapons into Israel, and they didn't set up any spies. They failed at their mission. They spent 5 years in Cyprus waiting for a sign. They entered Israel using a trick as old as the hills, and they failed. They were arrested twice in Israel, once in Jerusalem and once in Behaira. They were interrogated by Shin Bet and then released with a fine and a warning to leave the country. If it wasn't for the fact that their mission was revealed, they would probably still be in Israel, sitting in some dingy hotel room in the middle of nowhere, waiting for their next instructions from Tehran. As for Avigdor Lieberman, he continues to serve as Israel's alternate prime minister and defense minister. He survived the threat from the Iranian regime and lives to fight another day. Now, some people might say that this story is a hoax, that it never happened, but I'm here to tell you that it did happen. And the only reason why it hasn't been widely reported is because of the fear of exposing sensitive information that could compromise future Israeli operations. But thankfully, we have all the details, the names, the dates, and the locations, so we can share this incredible story with you today. From start to finish, these two Iranian spies failed at every turn. Their mission was doomed to fail before it even began. If they could smuggle 2 men into Israel, then they could certainly smuggle weapons. And if they were successful in smuggling weapons into Israel, then they would have kidnapped or killed Avigdor Lieberman long ago. But the fact that they didn't makes me think that they weren't even carrying any weapons to begin with. They entered Israel unarmed, and they remained unarmed throughout their entire mission. All they had were forged documents, and perhaps some basic combat skills. But what does this story teach us? First and foremost, we need to understand that Iran doesn't need nuclear weapons to attack Israel. Iran has thousands of trained spies and operatives who are ready to carry out attacks against Israel. Secondly, we need to understand that Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps is behind this plot. They masterminded everything: the forged passports, the surveillance, the weapons training, the mission briefing, everything. And finally, we need to remember that this is a war that will be fought not only on the battlefield, but also on the streets and in the shadows. This is a war that will be fought on many fronts, and we need to be prepared. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so today. Thank you for watching, and until next time, Shalom Aleichem.